Rachel, she's just got it.
I can see she's on.
I know, she's on it. She's on everything.
She's good.
Our conversation around these stories, I have to do that.
Where is Rachel?
She came.
She's on another device at the office.
She set it up and nothing.
She's here and she's there. She's everywhere. Where is she not? Yeah. Were you worried? So she's fine. She's okay.
It's actually a huge plus.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. People are still coming in. Okay. Oh my gosh, so much throat clearing. Here we go. Here we go. We're talking about stories. We're not worried about whether the stories happened or didn't happen in this way. We're thinking about what the stories are teaching us. We're thinking about them also on their own terms as a piece of ancient literature. We're using the guiding hand of Ruth Calderon, the amazing MK who got up and for the first time in the history of the Knesset was a secular woman teaching Talmud. And we spoke last time about that lovely exchange between Ruth Calderon and the Shas representative who had this moment of sharing Torah and debate in the Knesset, and really what she's doing in her book, which I'm holding up again to the, oh, this is not working. There we go, to the camera. A Bride for One Night, is that she's going through these Talmud stories, both on a scholarly level, speaking about them in their own context, and also then on as a literary tool, and she's rewriting them using that very brief Talmud story as an inspiration to sort of riff off of. So what we'll do today, did everyone in the room get a handout? Okay, great. And I will share my screen in a moment. What we will do is, first I want to read a brief reflection that Calderon shares in her book about some of the ways that this story reflects the realities of what it meant to have a drought. The context in the tractate of Ta'anit is all about drought and praying for rain. Then I want to go through exactly what you just opened, Barbara, the story that she has rewritten, and really take our time with it and see where she's gone with it. So for those who weren't here last time, the story on the front of your sheet, at the top there, that's our primary text, these few lines. And I'll share in the Zoom room, I'll share the link to my Sephora source sheet in case you want to look at it on your own. And then we will be turning to Ruth Calderon's own words. But I wanted to share with you two things, actually. First of all, in her introduction, she talks about, in general, about the nature of these Talmudic stories. And one of the things she shares is what she calls the imaginary map of the Talmud. And oh, someone is putting in the chat. Oh, you shared the link. Okay. How come I don't have that chat?
Actually, it was a personal chat.
That's weird.
She was saying that she
okay.
linked them. It
Okay.
wasn't for everybody.
It's weird that it's not coming up for me on my
Was it-
computer. Oh, I know why. Because there's another Rachel Finegold. Okay, this is going to be a challenge. Okay.
Oh.
I'm on two screens.
Oh.
I'm going to actually ask Rachel to rename the other one just so that it's less confusing.
And I think it was an individual chat that
Yeah.
was sent to only one person, so it doesn't go to you, doesn't go to everybody. It shouldn't.
Okay, we're figuring this out.
Marilyn, yeah.
So it's a little bit better than last week where we couldn't even see people. Now we see you. And by the way, for our friends on the Zoom, if you are able to turn on your cameras, we love seeing you. If you have your cameras off, we still love having you. We love having you here. And as always, you can freely use the chat. And once in a while, I'll make sure to turn to our Zoom room and ask for any verbal questions that people might have. Okay, so just listen to the way Ruth Calderon describes the place that we're inhabiting when we're inhabiting the Talmudic story. She says, and this is, you don't have this, I'm just reading from her introduction. The imaginary map is characterized by a combination of wide angle views and close-ups. The wide angle lens encompasses the creation of the world, the Garden of Eden, the Great Sea, Babylon, Rome, and Israel. The close-up captures tiny details of daily life, such as a clay lamp in the hands of a bride on her wedding night, a fish pond in the yard of the school teacher's home. That's the one we're looking at. A fox that scampers out of the demolished Holy of Holies. Each detail illuminates and animates the larger expanse. What she's saying is we're zooming in, but we're keeping the big picture in mind. Thank you, Rachel. You understand what I mean? Someone was chatting me, but it went there because that's my name also. Too many, yeah, too many Rachels. Exactly.
There can't be too
She
many.
also says when you paint this map, she says it's almost like, you know, if you read Winnie the Pooh and there's a picture of like the universe that you're inhabiting, it's not it's almost fantastical, right? She's like, there's a river here, there's a schoolhouse there, and suddenly you're in the heavenly court with God, or you're in the Beit Midrash, suddenly you're in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. Thank you, exactly. And it's beautiful. And the way she says that the Agadic map has this historical dimension. It has ritual dimensions, like suddenly we're talking about ovens and baked breads and matzahs and sweets and the aroma of dough. And then he says that she says there's also the human scale. Distances are measured by the steps taken by a horse, or by the journey of a father back to his wife and son, or by the distance from a Babylonian academy to one in Israel. I just love that she's embracing the mythical dimension or the fantastical world that the rabbis are creating. And so she's very much keeping that in mind as she writes her version of these stories. The second thing I wanted to share with you was, as I said, about drought. And this is just a brief excerpt. So I guess I should explain. In every chapter, she has the story itself, which is just very small usually. Then she has her own version of the story. And then she has what she calls reflections on the story, where she now takes a step back and says, what is this about? So when we talk about rain in a place like Babylonia, she says, in Babylonia, where people made their living on the rivers, and an excess of rain carried the risk of fatal flooding, rain underwent a symbolic transformation, shifting from a basic need to a sign of plenitude and divine goodwill. Once again, the sages of Babylonia are depicted in the Talmud as impotent. That was what happened in this story. They really need the rain and they can't bring the rain. The rain falls only in their moment of downfall, in their renunciation of honor, and in their despair. In contrast, the storytellers of the land of Israel create a gallery of alternative heroes who succeed in bringing rain. Simple anonymous figures ranging from the kind-hearted owner of a whorehouse to a kindergarten teacher. This is a different story, but the kindergarten teacher is ours. They operate outside of the study house and outside of the academy, but it is they who merit an answer from heaven. We talked about this last time, that the fanciest scholar, rabbi, can't do his job, but this simpleton, this simple teacher of children, he holds the key to what everybody needs. And it turns authority on its head. It challenges what we mean by righteousness, power, all of these things. Please.
Is it not also a question of perspective in terms of what we expect? It doesn't matter if you're Babylonian or you're a Hebrew. It's a question of, I accept that it all comes from God. And until you recognize that, you're going to try all kinds of magical spells and incantations.
It's submitting to that higher authority, to the divine will.
Yeah.
Very nice. And the rabbi who's supposed to have that access,
He's a
doesn't-
conduit, but
exactly, he
can't
doesn't
make it
have his own
happen.
power.
I mean, if we accept that it's
I'm
not
just
in our
sharing the
hands,
screen
I
at
mean,
the
we can
same
do the
time.
best we can not to prevent climate change. But if we accept that we have no control over bringing rain, we don't.
Right. And sorry, I can't do two things at once. Rain in, I'm pasting into our chat the link to the Safaria sheet, and then I'm going to share it on the screen. So there's the link. And here is the screen share. Welcome, welcome, Farla. Hi. And here we go. Okay. So I see what I should do. Just a minute. So that everyone in our room can see everybody there. There we go.
Rachel, if that's the case, if man can't do anything, so why in Masechet Tanit, which deals with like not having enough rain, why did they bother dealing with prayer and everything else? And we have it in our daily, when we change from Shiva Ruach or Morid Agashim. So that if we can't have any kind of influence, then why do we pray for it?
Can appreciate that.
I think the idea is that the key to, sorry, I'm doing two things at once. I'm trying to see if I can get everyone back on our screen. Here we go. That's what I wanted to do. So everyone in the room can see who's there. All right. The idea is that rain is an expression of the divine human relationship, that it's a spiritual answer that God is giving to our prayers. So it's not that we can't control it, it's that we recognize God can control it, and therefore in a time of drought, we think, how can we be more connected to God? How can we be more righteous? How can we fast or pray, etc.? And it's a matter of the nature of these topographies, especially in the land of Israel. Rain represents God's favor, God's attention. The Torah says in Devarim, it's a land, Eretz Asher Einei Hashem Elokecha Ba, that the eyes of God are paying attention to Israel. Merishit Hashana ad Acharit Hashana, the beginning of the year, the end of the year, the rainy seasons, this sense that, sorry, I'm admitting more people. Okay. Did it not work from my screen? See what I'm doing here? This is ludicrous. This is not working. I feel like I'm
As long as they
I'm
can hear
playing-
you, don't worry about it. We
yeah,
don't
but I wanted to make sure someone got in. Usually Rachel leaves.
You want me to sit there and look?
No, it's fine. It's fine. We're experimenting still how this is gonna come. Thank you.
It's,
He knows what he's doing.
Tell me it's all fine.
Okay, come sit. Thanks, Louis. You're my TA now.
Yes, exactly.
If you want to sit next to me, you can sit there.
Well, I wanted to sit next to you.
Okay, so I love the train of thought. Let's just jump into this story, shall we?
Like you were talking about Israel.
Israel and rain, and yes, and it's sorry, I'll just say, Louis, just when someone comes
Yes,
in,
of
or
course.
if something
Yes. Yeah.
funky goes on there. The rain represents God's approval.
Yeah.
So anything you do there, that's what we see here.
Correct.
Got it. All right, we are going to start with Ruth Calderon's rendering of this story. So it's going to be story time. Settle in. And I'm going to pause now and then, and we'll have a chance to just observe what is it that she's doing. We were 25 students sitting before the teacher during that parched summer. And that's the setting. He was young, still wet behind the ears, and he taught us by playing melodies. Sometimes he would play a tune slightly differently than we were accustomed to, adding pleasant trills. He was tall and thin as a reed, and his beard had still not filled out. I loved his schoolroom, where we sat in groups of 4, crowding around the parchment scroll. The teacher's house became a home for me. So what do we know so far about the teacher?
Very kind.
Kind,
Calm.
young, calm. What do you think about how she talks? She mentions the melodies that he's playing.
That he's willing to color outside the lines.
Yeah, they're a little different than the usual melodies. He's an innovator. And his stature is described as a reed,
Oh,
tall. And then also, what do we know about a reed?
Again,
It's
flexible.
right, it's flexible. she's really embracing the literary here. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, she might read it.
And his schoolroom was his house. He's teaching them in his house.
So there's a
No
personal
distinction
connection.
between daily life
Mhm.
and life of
And
the
he's
spirit.
And he's bringing his personal to the professional. Yeah, I don't know how typical that would have been for the teacher's house to be the schoolroom. I don't know that. But that's a choice she makes here.
Nowadays, it would be quite suspicious.
Yeah.
Also, he's teaching them from a scroll, which is unusual.
But in the ancient world, the comment, in case people didn't hear it, is that he's teaching them from a scroll, which would have been unusual. But in the ancient world, that's what they had. That's what they would have been teaching from. So in the years before the printing press, a book was a scroll was a book. But thank you for pointing that out. We're in a very different era.
What period actually are we in?
Well, she's imagining it in the Talmudic era. So imagine the
Far
year
back.
400 or 500.
And it could be in a
Right.
tent.
Maybe it says a house, so
Yeah,
that's
but
interesting. But what the house
maybe
would
there
have
was-
looked like maybe
but-
would have been,
maybe there was no place for them to teach, and that's why he used his home.
yeah, maybe because the study house, the study hall, the Beit Midrash would be for the adults to study,
Where
not
would
for
that
the
be?
children.
It's like a
That would be
daycare
the Beit
center,
Knesset.
in
The synagogue / study hall would be the communal learning and praying place.
No, but where is this taking place at this time?
So we're in the land of Israel, and
I see.
Rabba's gonna travel somewhere, we don't know.
Okay, in
Imagine if
Israel. Okay.
We're asking. Okay, any other questions in the Zoom room or comments before we go on? Okay,
Well, he said something about the flute. Did you see it?
the chat, what was the
Yeah,
chat?
the reed
The
also.
reed, oh, thank you, Francis. See, that's what I
saw
need.
that.
The reed also makes a flute. Yofi, very nice. And you can also pay attention, like she forgot to.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. One after another, my friends began reading the letters of the alphabet, and soon some could combine words to form sentences with sense and meaning. I sang the melodies we learned along with everyone else, but the names of the letters eluded me. No matter how hard I tried, I saw only lines, stripes and shapes like the full or crescent moon, written in black ink atop a scroll that smelled heavenly. Whenever the teacher wasn't looking, I would lean toward the scroll to sniff it. As time went on, I tried to conceal my weakness. I couldn't read. So after being introduced to this teacher through the eyes of the student, we're now getting to know the student himself. And what does he connect with? And what does he not connect with? He can connect with melodies. He easily sings the melodies.
He has a sensory appreciation.
The
Yeah.
senses. The senses.
Beautiful sight. And
Exactly, sight and smell, and he connected to the moon, so he can make connections. He's an intelligent kid. And
But
any
dyslexic.
teacher has taught kids like this, right? Who just, it might be a dyslexia, right? It might be a learning challenge,
Yeah.
or it just might be not, they don't have an affinity toward that. They don't see that right away on the page. They don't see those.
Maybe he hadn't learned to read yet because he was very young. Because of
Right,
Kohl.
but it
Could
seems
be all
that the
ages.
other kids are catching on and he's not. So he's behind, but he has other strengths.
It could be-
Yeah,
It's not.
There could be all ages, so he may be,
that's true too. It could have been a
yeah.
mixed in those days. Okay, so we'll continue. Once one of the children made fun of me by imitating my stuttering.
Okay.
Tears trembled in my eyes, and I was gripped by a cold paralysis. I forgot the teacher's rules of decorum. Before my tears could betray me, I lunged at the offending boy and hit him. The bench collapsed on him, and together both boy and bench fell to the ground, accompanied by the tittering of the class. I felt relieved. I had managed not to cry, and my friends had delighted in my mischief. So this is a success for him in the classroom. I'm sure, I mean, I'm looking at all the educators that we have in the physical room and on the Zoom room. You know this well. I just want the approval of my friends. So A, I can't cry. B, I'm gonna make trouble. That's gonna give me the reward that I need, and also just, oh my gosh, there's words that are not coming out of my
Defending
mouth.
himself against the limit.
And also hide his disability.
Yeah.
Okay, here comes the teacher. Suddenly I heard the teacher coming toward me, and my shoulders shrank, fearing the pinch that would follow. I was surprised to feel, I'm sorry, was there I'm sorry, another word. I was surprised to feel a gentle palm resting on my shoulder. Long fingers spread out over the length of my back. The teacher spoke my name and asked that I get up and leave the room with him. The other students followed me with their eyes, excited about my banishment. Ooh, drama. I was terrified, convinced that my days at school were over, and now my father would send me to work as an apprentice to the cobbler. All my friends would sleep until the hour when kings arise and then head to their studies. But I would be up from the crack of dawn working with cold hands on disgusting leather. I love what she just did. She reminded us of what it means to a child to be in school. And he knows already it's going to be the cobbler. So what does that make you think?
His father's eager to see him.
Yes, his father told him, okay, you think you're going to go to school? Just wait. If you don't do well, back to the cobbler you go. That's the default.
Which could also account for his lack
It's
of
a privilege.
ability,
Sorry, say it again, Esther.
which could also result in the lack of reading ability in comparison with the
Yeah.
other children's. on the
Yeah,
school.
and this would be, that's right. The stakes are high. This is his only chance. So you're saying even that, the fear.
Well, in some have families, the mother might want him to go to school, but daddy wants him to go to work, so there's
Right,
time lag
right.
before he gets there.
Yeah.
His father
Oh, I
doesn't-
see what you're saying. Oh, that's why maybe he started later.
Yeah.
His father doesn't have any confidence that he can do anything.
And I wonder if the father is literate. In the ancient world, most men would not have been literate, and certainly not the women.
No.
And if you did go to school, you went until the age of 10, 11, 12, but then you had to go to work. So this is his one chance.
Interesting, he says students and children, he doesn't say boys, so like, it's almost like I'm first picturing it as a mixed class, I mean, ridiculous
Well,
historically, but.
she might be doing that. Ruth
Mm.
Calderon, and we'll see this throughout her selections of stories, have a lot to do with gender and regendering some of the stories, or recasting, not regendering, but reimagining maybe the roles of women and of men in ways that the text allows for it. So the text doesn't say it's a room of boys. The text just introduces us to the teacher and says, I teach children. Where does he say it? In the original text, I teach Bible to the children. Yeah, B'nai could, it's usually boys, but it could be mixed. It could be mixed. But that's important. That's a good point.
But he's really painting, she's really painting a picture of a child with disabilities and stuttering.
Yeah,
and not
exactly,
being able to
yes.
read. It's quite, the profile is quite.
Yeah, it's very,
vivid.
it's very vivid.
It's not just the anxiety of the parents disagreeing.
If
by
he was really
insurance.
dyslexic, he wouldn't have learned to, it sounds to me like
No,
a child is
there's-
blocked, he's
there's
blocked from the.
He
other
has
types
a-
of
yeah.
anxiety, yeah.
Ways that you compensate learning, whether if you can't learn with the symbolic letters, you learn orally. You
But
know,
even a
sometimes-
dyslexic child could eventually get to a point where
Yeah,
they
for
would
sure,
read.
for sure.
Yeah,
It just would take
It
a
wouldn't be
lot
insane.
longer, and it wouldn't be just because they got a fish from the pond. That's what you're trying to say.
But
Okay, you're
sometimes-
reading ahead.
But
Sorry, what's that,
sometimes,
Esther?
sometimes a child is stuttering doesn't necessarily mean he has dyslexia. He may have a lot of anxiety, and the
Right.
father didn't want him to go to school, and who knows what's going on at home, and he's under stress and pressure, and he instinctively wants to go to school. He might start stuttering. And
I
that
love the
could
way
be-
we're diagnosing this kid based on all the
$100.
thin evidence we have, but it's no, I think it.
I'm
Because that's
saying-
what
I've seen that happen.
the child is.
Really?
Also, did you catch this reference to the hour when the kings arise?
Yes.
Only kings can sleep past dawn.
Mm.
Royalty, that's a privilege. But the rest of us working class folks, we get up with dawn and we go work with our hands. Okay, here they go. We went out. The teacher told the other students to review their letters. The sun fell behind the hills. The sky lay suspended over the city as if giving it a once-over. I could hear the chirping voices of the rest of the class singing the alphabet as instructed. We walked over to the yard behind the teacher's house, which concealed a garden with a path running along its length. I walked slowly beside him, not behind him. I'm just noticing that beside him, conscious of his presence. At the end of the path, I saw a fish pond, round as an eye, like a patch of sky. The teacher stood still and encouraged me to move closer to the pond. Here, you take the lead. You move closer, right? I approached cautiously and caught a glimpse of the sky reflected in the water. A small mass of water vapor, almost unnoticeable in the sky above, appeared as a heavy rain cloud on the surface of the water. My own thin face, when reflected in the water, looked like the face of an older boy with full round cheeks. A light wind came and scattered the surface of the water into thousands of circles, and my face broke into innumerable tiny ripples that were all me. Life was pleasant there in the upside down double world. The sun cast forth rays of gold and orange and pink that blended in the blue water. I saw a beauty that I had not known before. It was the complete opposite of the awful drought we were experiencing then. From time to time, the fish would come up for air. The teacher extended a net that was tied to a long stick, skillfully drew out a fish and placed it in my hand. Take it, he said. The fluttering of the smooth fins between my fingers shook my whole being. A moment later, the teacher held out a jar filled with water, and the fish leapt into it. In looking again at the water that was now calm, I saw my own face in its surface as if I were created anew. So let's pause and take this all in. There's so many elements here. Think about what she does with the water, the reflection, the mist, the vapor, the rain, the not rain, the colors. First, I'll just ask anyone in the physical room, because it's hard. We've got the Zoom so anyone here want to call out a line that jumped out at you?
The double, upside down double world.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
The doubleness, the virtual world and the real world,
And he's able to see himself differently now.
Yes, and he's
Because out there in the reflection in the water, he sees himself in the reverse, not the way that he's been seeing himself or the others people are seeing him.
So it's he's seeing himself as he would be seen from.
From beyond. And
My face broke into innumerable tiny ripples that were all me. The fact that even if you feel impotent, you have an effect, you have a cause and effect on
the
the people
ripple.
around you. So he's not powerless in this world. He's not insignificant. What he does has ripple effects.
And I also love that they're all me. So there are lots of different possibilities of who that me could be. Until now, I only see that me who's struggling to read. But
Thin.
and thin, right? So I noticed that too. You went from thin to a round-faced older boy. He sees himself now, maybe the way the teacher is seeing him. Growing, he's growing. I'll turn to the Zoom room now. Anyone else want to unmute and say something that jumped out at you in this?
Kind of the opposite.
Sandra, please.
Kind of the opposite. Normally little kids, when they're really little, they have round faces, and when they get older, their faces get thin. It's kind of the reverse. So
That's true.
Unless he's so.
So what do you think she's trying to do by depicting him as the thin or limited in some way?
I don't know, like catching your attention that things are reverse of what you maybe normally experience, but maybe in that society he was thin because he was skinny and he didn't have enough to eat. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe he's diminishing himself. Francis, I see your hand. Do you want to jump in, unmute yourself?
He's got one of the double.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I was thinking that it's kind of going into the paradise garden. It reminds me of Adam, got to name the animals and gave the names to everything, and it's something to do with language. I just see that kind of expansion into that he's gone from this drought to this really beautiful garden, which is paradisical.
Yeah, it's a
And
little
it
bit
has
of an
something to do with
oasis.
language also, that he's going to be able to read, which is kind of language, but it also kind of ties in with Adam and going back to this, I don't know, that's kind of
Yeah,
expanded out there.
yeah, there's something about it being like an idyllic place. And the Garden of Eden, it's an interesting connection you're making, because the Garden of Eden is filled with rivers running through it. It's a place that doesn't require rain. And that's mentioned in the Torah, that there didn't need to be any rain. And actually there was no rain until there was Adam and Eve. There was humanity to pray for rain, to need the rain, to ask for the rain. The lowest point in Israel, the Jordan River Valley, is referred to in the Torah as Kegan Hashem, like the garden of God, because it actually is lush.
But it's also
filled with
paradise in
water.
the sense that you don't even have to go fishing for fish. They come to you.
Oh, right, they come to the surface.
Take me.
Annie, I see your hand.
I think it's interesting that he's comfortable in the upside down double world, because if he's having trouble learning to read, maybe his world is also upside down. He sees things not as other people do.
Well, also, if you're sitting in a circle, you're not all seeing the scroll the same way. So it is.
Oh, that's true. Yes,
Maybe he's standing at a place where.
No, but I'm saying kids sitting in a circle can't read what the teacher is reading unless.
there wouldn't have been enough
Yes,
scrolls for everybody to have one. You had one, and these 4 kids
So-
are sharing.
But on the subject of scroll, it's also interesting because was it written on parchment? And why would he have the disgusting smell of leather while he's sniffing the scroll? I find that interesting.
Oh.
Probably the tanning of
Yeah,
leather.
but
It is
I
a
just
disgusting.
find that interesting.
There was a comment too.
Anyone in the Zoom, the question of, we don't know what the teacher told the class. Right, when he walked out. Esther, are you trying to say something? Go ahead.
2 lines here. I saw a beauty I had not known before, and then as opposed to the awful drought we were experiencing then. I see this young man as a young man. I don't know if he was a little boy or a real, older, but he's seeing potential where he hasn't seen it before. He's seeing,
Oh, very nice.
I can do something that they don't, everybody in my family or whatever, other people didn't think I could do, and neither did I.
Oh,
Now I
a
have
world
a
of possibilities
Yes,
open up.
it's opening up for him.
But even the idea of beauty, is that something they would have talked about, and that like beautiful things would not have been, it would have been a very material world and very,
Practical.
yeah, you would not be having aesthetic conversations.
But this
Yeah.
teacher is bringing into this space, and that's
Yeah.
what he's seeing.
No,
He's an artist, right? He's a,
Exactly, so now he's opening up the world of aesthetics to this child.
and maybe he's a bit of a space cadet in class, because he's looking out the window at the beauty of the
Has an artistic
sky. And
soul.
right, yeah, he is a softer student. Actually, we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, we're gonna move forward in the story. So this is almost the end, not quite, I see. When we returned to the class, the teacher did not say a word. So he's had a bit of a conversion experience, right? A transformative moment. And then they go back and they don't speak about it. I left the jar in the hallway, so it's not in the class, took my seat, squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, and opened them again. I read the letters effortly.
Oh, mirror.
Okay, so it's a little bit miraculous. You're right, like, what? He can't be dyslexic, but whatever it was, he had a block, like we were saying. And now He has more confidence in himself. He has seen a new side of himself. He understands the teacher cares about him as a person. The teacher understands that when he lashed out, it wasn't to be malicious. It was an act of self-defense. It was all this stuff. And he can read. From that day on, I was always at the teacher's side. I became his shadow. Wherever he went, I went too. I immersed with him in the bathhouse on the eve of Shabbat, and I stood by the windows to eavesdrop on the lessons he taught between the afternoon and evening prayers. So that's the grown-up lessons,
Yes.
right? Between Mincha and Mariv. I woke up before dawn to honor the schoolroom with my promptness, and he in turn was kind to me. He would praise my work and would sometimes grant me the privilege of running an errand for him in the market. Now we're back to the story. The month of Adar came upon us, and still no rain had fallen. The members of the village lowered their heads as if they had been chastised by God. So this is what I was talking about. Rain is symbolic of the relationship that God has with you. Business slowed, and people avoided each other's eyes in the streets. Dust swirled in the alleyways. Passers-by hovered close to the walls of the buildings, either seeking shade or hiding from an unknown terror. I woke up thirsty in the morning, and I went to bed thirsty at night. Now notice the contrast in the previous paragraph. It's all about a relationship between him and this teacher. But now in the society, wider society, it's all about isolation and we don't even want to look each other in the eye. What does this mean about us? And there's dust, there's hovering passersby. There's not people connecting with other people, and there's thirst.
And there's a contrast with the garden he has with the pond that's got a lot
Yes.
of water in it.
Yes, yes. One morning when the drought was at its worst, I followed my teacher to the synagogue for the Torah reading, as was my wont. I overheard the older boys whispering that Rav, known as Abba the Tall, that's how they would call him, it was his, I guess, nickname, was on his way. Rav's visit to our small town was regarded as a portent. From house to house, the rumor spread that Rav, the head of the great yeshiva and one of the leaders of the generation, would decree a fast, and his merit would protect us. Amen. He's hearing this, right? Once Rav comes, we're all going to be okay. Rav's merit. So he has power and he has honor, and he is the key to our sustenance, our salvation. So they're all going to come to meet Rav as a community. Exhausted and parched, the community came en masse to the synagogue. Women with their dresses hanging loosely over their bones, men beset by worry, and children hoping for a miracle. Rav, dressed in a splendid cloak, a little bit haughty already, right? Looked down at the local population like a presiding elder. He came from the big city, whose news did not reach our small town. He found our rustic look charming. Women in old-fashioned dresses, innocent children with dirty faces. Speaking with a strange accent, Rav decreed a one-day fast, and the entire community answered Amen in feverish devotion. Everyone headed home hungry, but high in spirit. I guess I should correct myself. Before I was thinking that it was a town in Israel, but it seems it's still in Babylonia. It's just a smaller town, and Rav is from the great academies. Okay, so Rav decreed this fast. Now that's the key to, and I see this question, what is the terror? What was the terror? Where it says people are, sorry, I lost it. Where is it?
Hiding from unknown terror. In the third paragraph. Dust, after dust swirled.
Oh, it's the previous paragraph. It's not on the screen. That's why. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, it's God's decree that we should have a drought. I think the terror is about our fate. And also remember, this is important. Yes, Elena says the anger of God, the anger of Hashem. It's the month of Adar. When do we start praying for rain? The end of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret. In fact, elsewhere in the tractate of Ta'anit, it says, if by the certain date toward the end of Cheshvan, I think it's the 27th of Cheshvan or so, maybe it's the 17th, there was a 7 in it. But if by this and this date in Cheshvan, there hasn't yet been rain, because you've been waiting a whole month and there still hasn't been rain, then you start to decree fasts. If you've gone from Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, you're actually at the very end of the rainy season. By Nisan, by Passover, you're going to stop praying for rain. So you're down to the wire here. Everyone is desperate. The crops are failing. What will be? It is terrifying. It's the month of Adar. It's the last ditch effort.
There's a comment.
The drought symbolizes a terror. It's being perceived as a punishment. Adar seems awfully late. Yes, thank you, Michael. Exactly what I was just saying. Awfully late for no rain. The next day passed like a mini Yom Kippur. Fasting improves the way people feel about themselves. And when the townspeople gathered for the afternoon prayer in the synagogue, they appeared as a chorus of angels and not as ordinary merchants, workers, and idlers. As Rav chastened them, they stood at attention, holding their breaths and focusing their thoughts. Then Rav stopped pleading with the heavens. So he finished his prayer, he finished the ceremony. Mincha means it's almost sundown, it's the end of the day. And there was silence. Nothing happened. Confounded, right? They're confused. Like, what do you mean? This was gonna be it. It's not, it's Rav. The people continued praying, hoping for a delayed miracle. The young teacher was asked to lead the congregation in prayer. You get up and lead mincha. I looked at him, and then I closed my eyes with all my might, following with him letter by letter. So he's following with him,
Yes.
letter by letter, but with his eyes closed. That's really interesting.
No,
He sees the words and he sees the words in his mind. now.
He already has absorbed it so deeply within him that he doesn't even need to see the letters. He knows it, and he knows his teacher's voice, and he knows what his teacher is saying. He who causes wind to blow and to fall, that's Mashiv Haruach Morid HaGeshem, that's the one-liner in the Amidah that we pray for rain. And the teacher read, he who causes the wind to blow. From the windows, the branches of the trees began to rustle. A wind washed over the open synagogue and fluttered gowns and kerchiefs. It would be an open synagogue, by the way, back then, because often it was like a plaza more than some of these old mosaics, and it's like it was like often an open air synagogue. I don't know how else to say it. And then he cried, he who causes the rain to fall, and the unmistakable smell of the first rains of the season took hold in the synagogue. A smell so sweet, it was almost painful. And that's where she ends it.
That's a terrific.
Isn't that
Yeah, she
beautiful?
brackets it very, yeah.
That's beautiful.
So what did she do? Now, let's go back to the story she started with. Go to if you're on the paper, it's the front page. I'm scrolling up for our friends on Zoom. What was this story? The story simply started with Rav came to town. Rav happened to come to a certain place. So we know at the end of the story, this school teacher is going to be the rainmaker. What does she do? She starts with the backstory. And she makes the choice to tell it from the perspective of the student who needs that fish that the teacher is going to talk about at the end. So what I'd like to do is go back and read the original story and notice where the creativity is already embedded in the story, like where her midrash on the midrash is already embedded. So as I said, it starts with Rav, but she wants to introduce us first to all the characters. Rav happened to come to a certain place. I'm sorry, I'm not reading it in Aramaic again, like I did last time. I'm sticking with the English. He decreed a fast, but rain did not come. So it just said that one line. She painted the picture of that whole day, and they waited for Rav to come. It wasn't an everyday event, and he arrived and then decreed the fast, and it was ineffective. The prayer leader descended to lead the service before him, meaning before Rav. So she does add this sense that everyone is watching this prayer leader, and recited, he who makes the wind blow and the wind blew. He who makes the rain fall and the rain came. And that is where she ends her story. Now she chooses not to include this. Rav said to him, who are you? Instead, she takes it and puts it at the beginning of her story to introduce us to the teacher. So we got it here through the conversation with Rav. What are your good deeds? Like, wow, how did you do that? He said to him, I'm a teacher of children, and I teach the Bible to the children of the poor as to the children of the rich. So what did she do with that line? Who was this boy now?
He's one of the poor students that they're
Yeah.
referring to, not one of
Yes.
the rich ones, because he's gonna ultimately, if he doesn't succeed, he's gonna end up doing manual labor with the.
Right, just like his dad, I would imagine, right? Maybe he's the cobbler's son, or maybe not, maybe his father is the blacksmith, I don't know. But he's not a scholar and he's not wealthy, and
Oh, yes.
his fate is the default is that he's gonna be a worker. But the teacher agrees to teach him. And if there's anyone who cannot pay, I don't take anything from him. So I don't really think this made it into her story much. What he's paying or not paying, I don't know,
No, that, it
but
wasn't.
no. And I have a fish pond, so here's the
But it
fish pond.
shows his
Any
good-
child,
It shows
Sorry,
his
what's
good
that, Jen?
deeds. It shows his good deeds because he is now
Yes.
going to take children who can't pay. Because it says, what are
Yes.
your good deeds?
thank you. Right, so that's his chesed, is that he's teaching some of these children for free. Any child who neglects his studies, I bribe him with the fish. So that's one aspect, and calm him and soothe him until he comes and reads. So that's from that, she built that whole scene. What would it look like for a teacher to soothe a child with a fish pond? What would that student see in the fish pond?
Great imagination.
Beautiful, right?
Yeah, it is.
No, but it's also a generosity of spirit because the child was expecting to be punished and instead the
Right.
teacher was understanding what his hurt was and was sensitive to it.
But I
It's
think what she took
totally
from it,
upside
I
down.
think it's sort of remarkable the way she took this whole hierarchy of importance.
Mm.
With
Mhm.
the great Rav, the lower teacher, the children, the poor child, the one who cannot read, like, there's a whole hierarchy, and it's the little child who cannot read, who in the end brings,
What's a teacher?
Well, he's the witness.
well, he's the witness,
to-
but it's
to
actually,
telling us
no,
about
I
it.
get the impression at the end that he's the one who says,
Oh,
he's praying with all
because
his might,
he's-
it's his prayer.
Oh, that's a nice
that
read
gets
of
them.
it.
I
I'm
think so.
scrolling down for our.
And then when he
Zoom friends to
says, a
see.
smell so sweet, it was almost painful, it takes you back to where he says the smell of the, like, it's bracketed, you've got the bracket.
Yeah,
where
because
he
he's
smells the-
sensory.
It's very sensory, he smells the beautiful words, I mean, the parchment or whatever, it's a beautiful smell to him. And then at the end, the smell of the rain is so sweet, it was almost, I think, I find this a very perfectly framed and well crafted.
It's beautiful.
It is.
So I want to add one more element. So she talks about what happens at that fish pond. I see there's a comment from
And a
Matt.
and a hand.
And and a hand, thank you. I also thought that was the child's prayer that brought the rain. Okay, so she's on the same page as you, Barbara. Or the combination of the child and the teacher. Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Because they're a team. They've become a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
That's
You
very
also,
nice.
you said
I-
something last week similar to that.
Naomi.
Like the child was rewarded. Last week you talked about something similar.
Say it again, because I couldn't hear. Say it again.
I'm sorry, last week, there was also a situation, I forget what it was, but I spoke to you about it after that, the child was rewarded for something that they did.
Oh,
last-
okay, right. About the discipline, instead of disciplining the
Yes.
child,
Yes.
he rewards him. But he's not rewarding his bad behavior. He's finding a way into to learning, to teaching.
Yeah.
Francis?
Yeah, Rabba, I have a question. For me, there are two parts here. One is the Rav and the prayer and that, and then we have the teacher and the child. And I'm just wondering if there's something in here, the difference between, the Rav is praying, okay, this is a type of mitzvah, but also you have a real practical mitzvah, which is helping this poor child. Is there anything
Right.
going on here about the difference between, I see the Rav, there's a question of humility in there, or maybe pride. But is there something going on about the difference between the prayer as a kind of mitzvah, but the actual action of doing something? Is that in there or that's not
Particularly,
there?
there's the, it's like, is the ritual mitzvah, and the action is the chesed. And
From the heart.
it's the chesed, it's the ben adam havero that wins out, that influences the power of the prayer. So empty prayer or prayer from haughtiness is not going to be as effective as prayer from a place of chesed or kindness, or maybe practicing what you pray, practicing what you preach.
Do you
Putting it
see
in.
that going on in the Agada here or not? I mean,
I
I
think
do.
so. I
see
think
this-
that's possible to find that in there. Yeah, yeah, thank you. Sharon?
Yeah, I was thinking that we always compare Torah to water.
Right.
Don't we?
I think we mentioned that last time.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, I didn't know
Yes,
that.
absolutely. And we are like fish swimming in it. We are surrounded by it, or we want to be immersed in it. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I also noticed he mentioned that the child mentioned that he goes to the ritual bath with his teacher. They're immersing in water
Which can be
together.
seen as creepy, but
Well, it was
Oh, you know
a
what, that's such a,
spiritual
that's,
moment.
that's a revisionist kind of.
I know.
And I said the
It's
same
an
thing to
activist
myself.
thing, yes.
Just don't go there, don't go there.
I want to read to you one more thing that she says, which is a really nice element, and I think it has a lot to do with power also. She says this is as well, this is a commentary on masculinity. The story of the fish pond is also a story about masculinity. A boy struggling with his letters and a parched land teach about the limits of male power. A rabbi who proclaims a fast is up against a god who withholds rain, and the two are locked in a cycle of dryness, right? Power versus power. In this story, the Talmud presents an alternative form of masculinity that also knows how to caress, to cross bounds, to go beyond the letter of the law, to win over a child with the gift of a fish. In other words, the teacher shows a softer masculinity, a compassion, not this entrenched power struggle. The Talmud suggests a model of gentle masculinity that ministers to young children without violence, right? He thinks he's cutting the strap when the teacher walks over, which of course would have been the default way that you discipline children in school. Reacting with a gentle touch to a blow struck in the classroom. The child is learning how to be tough, how to be a strong kid is by fighting. And the teacher is showing him the opposite model, offering closeness in place of censure. This is an open form of masculinity, one that unlocks the heavens. This is the kind of man who is able to cause the wind to blow and the rain to fall. Isn't that interesting? Now that's all hers. You can quibble with whether or not it's embedded in the story, but she has shown us that power and softness are really about the masculine coming to terms with whether there is any place for softness in leadership or in power or in masculinity. And she says this teacher is showing the boys another way to be a man. There's a comment here from Elaine, but the whole town had just been davening, not just a haughty rabbi. Surely the townspeople are sincere and simple folk. They're not powerful people. That's true. That's true. The townspeople were ineffective. And so as a whole, what do we make of that? They're not the haughty rabbi, but they're relying on the haughty rabbi to save them. And he doesn't, he can't. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that.
Sometimes you have to try to take it down to the individual Adam L'Chaviro. And because the teacher and the student had some empathic connection, that's more important than the show of unity of everybody davening. It doesn't really take the place of the kindness of one person to another.
Okay, but it's also about leadership, isn't it? Like all these people, they don't take the initiative themselves because they
don't think they have the power.
That's right, but
yeah.
But they do.
But this turns things upside down.
To look to leaders and to channel, like that, this
Yeah,
rod.
they do need a leader, but the leader that they get is from the bottom of the heap.
Yes, exactly.
Is the poor school
They would
teacher,
never have
the
looked at that
generous,
child.
the
They would never-
student.
That's the.
Going back to your comment about the different type of masculinity,
Yes, Sandra.
it's interesting, however, when does this child learn? None of the other kids see this. He's taken out and it's in private in the garden. None of the other kids see this soft masculinity. They don't know what's happening to this child. They
Oh,
don't
that's
know if being
interesting.
punished.
For all they know.
They
the
know he could be
teacher walked
punished.
him outside.
And
beat him.
he doesn't bring the glass with the fish in. He leaves it out in the
That's
corridor.
actually really interesting.
That is interesting.
That's
That
true.
the society
It
at
is their
large isn't
secret.
ready for this. Isn't ready, like this, the whole schoolroom doesn't get a fish. That wouldn't,
The whole
maybe
schoolroom
that would
doesn't
be
even
too
know.
much.
The whole schoolroom does not see the soft side of the teacher either.
Yeah, I think that's very astute.
Mhm.
And he leaves it out in the hallway, remember?
It's their secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is-
Well,
yeah, you
okay,
think it's
all
like-
right, I'm not.
You think it's a little
You're
sketchy?
not- it's-
Don't go there. It's a
No,
very
no, no,
sweet
no, no,
story.
let's not go there at all. Let's not do that.
What is there about the fish that's so special?
Well, I also think the moment where he holds the fish, he's holding life in his hands. It empowers him.
Exactly.
He has power. We talked about last
Yeah,
week.
he
He
has
has power
control.
over this fish. He has control, and life and death are in his hand.
Yes.
He can then place it in the jar and give it life.
It's
Henry
power.
But
James.
He
it's
can give
again,
it water.
fish are very, very slippery, and that makes power of holding it. It takes a lot of work to hold. it.
Right.
So life is in the balance sort of when that fish is in your hands, if that's your life, it's, you're not totally in control. It goes up and down.
Kind of
and
thinking
sideways.
about the old man in the sea and
Yeah,
like
that
taming the
makes sense.
fish. The fish is in
It's
this
also- it's
mysterious
also a very
place.
Christian symbol, fish.
Yeah, maybe. But she's not, I
I
mean.
know, that's why I'm thinking, why am
But
I
we
getting
have
this
common
vibe
Well,
of?
ancestry.
You know, until the teacher took him out, the kid was a fish out of water.
Ah.
And really, in the circle of all of
Nice.
the other children,
Nice.
he was at a deficit level, and this was leveling the playing field. It didn't have to be shared with everybody.
Oh, it wasn't for everybody, because
It
everyone else
wasn't-
didn't need it.
That's right.
Very
And
cool.
when he comes back into the room and he starts to read, I'm sure every eye in the whole room, all the other children perk up and say, "Oh, look at this." Because
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
especially
maybe.
the one who was the bully. Well,
I see,
call him a bully.
I see David's hand, and I also see we're at the end of our hour. So David, you're gonna have our last word, no pressure.
Okay, just
It'd be brilliant.
a quick comment. I think the boy's reaction to the teasing was perfectly natural. And of course, we're all conditioned to
course.
assume it was aggressive. But what was he supposed to do when he was being teased? Just put up with it, turn the other cheek?
Yeah, and I think what we're saying is that's the milieu in which he lives, and then most of us.
Yes,
live.
yes. But really,
need
it's a natural
aggression,
reaction. You don't
aggression.
just turn the other cheek.
Which makes lesson of the teacher even more significant, or even more out of the box, because he's breaking the mold.
Yeah.
Because it cuts the conflict.
Yeah, exactly. He
And
meets it
reverses-
with being a reed,
reverses.
right, with showing
Mhm.
flexibility. So we're gonna come to the end of this story, this chapter, and this is how we'll play.
This is
So
fun.
we're gonna
Good.
start next week with another story. I see water symbolized life. Yeah. There's so many great comments. And we'll keep going through. I think she has like 17 stories. It's gonna take us a good while. So you can keep that or give it whatever you choose. Thank you. Thank
Are all the stories on Masechet Tanit?
you for joining.